I needed to do this project because the shop has accumulated like 1,500 random clamps over the years. I built a rack for them a couple years back, but they don't really fit the rack that good, and it's kind of messy and inefficient for space. When I got to measuring out the clamps, I decided to break them down into three main categories. You have your standard bar clamp, your quick clamp style, and then your parallel clamp. Most of the clamps in each category are about the same size as far as hanging on a rack. When I drew these up, I wanted these to be easy to put your clamp into and even easier to make. So I broke them down into three main parts. There was the top, which you slid your clamps into, the back, which screwed to the wall, then there were some vertical supports to help hold the weight of the clamps. What you're watching here is version 1. This was the first iteration of it, and they only got better from here. So let's get into the build of making an easy and space efficient clamp rack. Despite being pretty easy to put together, I immediately realized there were a few things I would change on version 2. The first thing was the amount of slots I put in it. I had an uneven number so that the legs didn't line up perfectly. It was like skip 2, skip 2, skip 3, skip 2. So in order to make it better going forward, I was going to adjust that to make it fit perfectly. But for the shop and the prototype that it's going to be, this is fine. The second change was going to be how these legs attach. In order to keep them square, I was having to put the square up to them and make sure they were lined up. And even though they didn't have to be square, they needed to be square. So I decided to go back to the drawing board and add pockets to the back piece. That way the legs could just slide into that pocket, boom, they're square. The third thing was going to be the holes in the back to put the screws in the wall. Like that should have been on the original file, so I fixed that going forward. Here you see me putting them in there, but no, in version 2 they show up. Also in version 2, I decided to put a screw hole into the back of the leg. So here's my bar clamps fitting snug as a bug in a rug. Now we'll go to version 2. As you can see in the drawing, there are a few changes here. The pockets and the screw holes. These parallel clamps are pretty wide. Also, they're going to be pretty heavy, so I need this rugged enough to hold them. This would prove to be a little easier with the screw holes in the back. The one thing that I did wrong was I only put a single screw hole for the leg. I needed to put 2, that way it would square it up perfectly. Even though I pre-drilled these holes in the back, I went ahead and drilled through and countersunk them. That way this thing would fit nice and snug against the wall. By the time I got to version 3 for the quick clamps, I had narrowed down what worked and what didn't on the previous versions. What worked was leaving that pocket in the back to align the vertical. Also what worked was the screw hole from the back, but this time I made it too. Honestly, it just made it a little easier to put together, and since the center of gravity on this one's a little further out, it doesn't hurt to have a second mechanical hold on this. Now all that was left on this was snip, sand, file. You've got to make sure to pocket these and pre-drill them so they don't break the legs, also so that it'll fit flush against the wall. Moment of truth. This coming up right here just tells the status of my clamp situation and why I needed a rack so bad. I mean, seriously, what is going on here? If you made it this far, like and subscribe. Also, if you want access to the files, just let me know in the comments.